Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Pop Art. I am your He's Thinking of a Brick Wall host, Howard Casner. The premise of Pop Art is for my guest to choose a movie from popular culture, and I in turn will select a film from the art classic side of cinema. Today my guest, appropriately named Damien Riley from Riley on Film, has chosen the eschatological chiller, The Omen. Well, I chose the more low-key thriller Village of the Damned, the original. Both are about evil children. So to begin, let's have Riley tell us something about himself.
My name is Damien. My last name is Riley. I changed my blog and podcast name to Riley on Film years ago. I started teaching 5th grade in 1997. Now, after 18 years doing that, I teach college English at Victor Valley College, where I live up here in Victorville. It's about from where you are, Howard. It's on the way to Vegas. To quote Norman McLean in A River Runs Through It, which is my favorite movie of all time, teaching fits me. So I've been a teacher my whole life, and I enjoy it. I started my first blog on GeoCities. I started blogging heavily around 2004 on a platform called WordPress. But later on, I wanted to focus more on movies because I was getting older, and I thought, movies are so natural for me. I could just see a movie, come home, blog about it, and I'm done. And I started a movie blog called Riley on Film. I was introduced through that to Darren Lucas, and we co-hosted a show called Talking Stars, I think for about 2 years. And I was introduced to Jay Cluett and the Lamb cast. I've been on the panel with you a few times, Howard.
Oh my God.
And I focus currently and for a while on horror movies.
Right.
I'm a regular contributor to horrornews.net. Make sure it's net or you won't go to the right place. And I write songs on my guitar. I'm married with 3 kids. I have a Yorkie named Chewy and a cat named Tiana.
Great. Why don't we get into your choice? To begin, I will give some information on the film. The Omen was released in 1976. It was directed by Richard Donner. The writer was David Seltzer. Gilbert Tyler was the cinematographer. The music is by Jerry Goldsmith, and it stars Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner, Billy Whitelaw, Harvey Spencer Stevens as Damien, Patrick Troughton, Martin Benson, Sheila Rainin, and an uncredited Leo McKern. The basic premise of the movie is that when the son of the U.S. ambassador to Italy dies in childbirth, a priest convinces him to adopt a baby and tell his wife that the child is actually hers. But the child turns out to be the Antichrist. Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah.
Let's begin with why you chose this film.
Like I was talking in our jabber before we started recording, I went to school. I'm an 80s kid, I suppose you could say. I was 10 in 1980.
Right.
So I would have been 7. So I don't think I really got, much teasing. My name is Damien again. People just tease the heck out of me for it. And I think I got kind of tough because of it. It's sort of like the Johnny Cash song, Boy Named Sue. Every time I'd introduce myself, somebody said, oh, you're the son of the devil. So I had definitely a lively upbringing, getting teased with that name. I told my mother one time, can I change my name? Because everybody teases me. And she says, there's nothing wrong with your name, but you have a middle name. So I actually changed my name to my middle name periodically because it was that bad. I literally had bullies checking my scalp for 3 6s. I didn't see it as a child. My mom was very puritanical about movies. But when I got a little older, I started seeing all these movies that were forbidden. And of course, The Omen was the big one. When I saw it, I was just amazed by it. It was almost like a Star Wars experience, but in a horror genre. The music was amazing. The vibe of it was amazing. Of course, it was scary. I did see it fairly young. It just captured all my attention. To this day, I never get bored. I've probably seen it 10 to 15 times. I don't know.
It sounds like you think it still holds up, that you still have a good opinion of it today.
I do. It really stood up for me, and I do tend toward kind of a creepiness. I prefer a creepy, permeating feeling in a horror movie to blood and gore. I don't mind blood and gore, but for me, I'm always seeking out horror movies that have this sort of feeling I walk away with, and it's hanging on me. I like that feeling. My wife doesn't. She doesn't like that feeling, but I really like that feeling. So I watch horror movies by myself, and I get really creeped out, and I love it. And this one, I have to tell you, even though it was 1976, the bicentennial, remember 76, it was really creepy, and it still maintains that. I really like it. I think a lot of it has to do with the music. What do you think?
Well, certainly mentioning the music, I think even the director, Richard Donner, says that Jerry Goldsmith's score is probably one of the major reasons why the film works. It won the Academy Award for Best Music. It was his only win, Jerry Goldsmith. He's a fantastic composer for movies, but this was the only one he won the Oscar for. It also got nominated for song for Ave Santini. Definitely, that music is a major contribution, almost like in The Exorcist with tubular bells and things like that.
Yeah. I may be weird this way, but one thing that I really enjoy is burning incense. And I remember when I watched this for this show, I watched it a couple days ago, I think, and I burned some incense in the room and I pulled the blinds and I just watched it. I tell you, I recommend that. I mean, if there's anybody out there listening who hasn't seen The Omen, get the room set up. Get in a dark room, maybe even watch it at night because it will take you in. Now, it's nothing like the new movies coming out where you know, My Bloody Valentine comes to mind where you've got somebody getting their, head chopped off every scene, things like that. It's not like that. It's very slow in a good way. Slow burn, they call those movies. I gotta tell you, I love this movie. When I was a child, I hated it, the idea of it, but now as an adult, I think it's one of the best movies made. And it didn't even get a high rating. Let's see. Well, it's got 7.5 from the viewers on IMDb. So that's okay. That's pretty good. 7.5.
Well, that's today. At the time, it didn't get very good reviews at all. Mm-hmm. And I think I'll get into that more later when I'll give a little bit more of what I think about the film. What are some of your favorite scenes?
I want to jump ahead to the second movie just real quick. In that one, it almost felt like Raiders of the Lost Ark, if I'm thinking of the right sequel. It has that guy in it.
Well, in the first one, Liam McKern comes in at the end of the movie as the person at the archaeological dig.
That's the one. Okay, right. So it is in the first one. Yeah, I watched too many sequels at one time. I just was so taken in by that because it reminded me so much of Indiana Jones, and it made me kind of see a little influence there, maybe. Maybe Indiana Jones took a little from The Omen.
It certainly could be. The one that I thought of was The Shining with the child riding the tricycle.
Yes.
When I saw The Omen this time, I sort of wondered, I wonder if somehow that was channeled to Stanley Kubrick. But who knows? You get ideas from all over the place, and it's really hard to tell where people get their ideas.
Is that the scene where she falls? I think he's going, yeah, okay.
He's just riding around the hallway and riding around the house.
You're right. And he has a blank look on his face like that kid in The Shining. So that's probably one of my favorite scenes is when they go on the archaeological dig. I really liked that. That affected me. The other one that probably everybody will mention is when his nanny, says, "It's all for you, Damien." And I felt so important when she said that.
Yes.
And it's a very intense scene. I think that might turn off Puritan-like people, maybe like my mother. She'd say, "Why are we watching this?" But for me, that was really spooky and creepy.
I first saw the movie when it came out. I was in college, and I actually went a second time because a friend wanted to see it. I enjoyed it very much. I mean, I get a kick out of it, but there's a reason why I like it. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons why I like it is, I have to be honest, it's a silly movie.
Okay.
It's a silly movie. Okay. But for some reason, that's why I like it.
Okay, all right.
Because I'm watching this movie, and I'm very entertained, and I'm very into it, and I'm getting scared, and it's working very well for a lot of reasons. But I'm going, this movie makes no sense.
Were you a horror fan at that time?
I'm neither a horror fan nor not a horror fan.
Okay, all right.
The main, and people pointed out when it came out, it did not get good reviews when it came out. It got actually mostly very bad reviews. And one of the things everybody kept saying, the plot makes no sense. And it doesn't really. Satan, who has all this incredible power, I mean, he just has immense power that he can do almost anything he wants, goes about achieving his goal in the most Rube Goldberg contrived way. He's like a villain in a James Bond movie. Yeah. Instead of killing somebody off right away, he always waits just until that person gives Gregory Peck the next clue so that Gregory Peck can continue on with the story.
Yeah.
Basically, all Satan has to do, once Gregory Peck's character, Thorn, adopts that baby, he just has to kill off the mother and father. The baby goes to his brother, who is president of the United States.
Yeah.
All done. You know, he has this nanny who kills herself to make way for Mrs. Baylock by the incredible Billy Whitelaw. If she doesn't terrify you, I don't. And the nicer she is, the more terrifying she is. Why doesn't he just have her be the nanny from the very beginning? So,
yeah, that was a little confusing. The first time I saw it, I can remember I didn't quite put together what was happening.
So the plot makes absolutely no sense. In the same way, when he kills the priest. He doesn't kill the priest until after the priest gives him all this information. But that was one of the reasons why I was enjoying it so much.
One thing, as you're talking, it brought to mind more of a kind of a theme in that of husband and wife. That comes up a lot. I felt so bad for the wife, played by Lee Remick, correct?
Right.
She was the typical 70s, support my husband, whatever he does, I'll uproot and go. Women were starting to say, okay, I'm going to have my own direction, but it wasn't fully fleshed out. I think it kind of came more in the 80s. So she was kind of sort of like her own woman, but at the same time, the wife of a politician, an ambassador to the UK. So she just has to go wherever he says, and then she has this child. I think it's a spooky movie. You can put it on.
It is. It is.
Out of your mind, yeah.
It is. It's a very scary movie. I don't want to take away from any of that at all.
Why do you think it's silly? Just the plot mostly?
The plot. The plot makes absolutely no sense.
Well, you're a screenwriter, so that's why.
But I'm not the only one. At the time, a lot of people were saying it really made no sense, and the way it was structured and the way it built. But as I said, to me, that's what makes it actually a lot of fun and why I like it, because I'm watching this movie and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm being very scared, while at the same time I'm going, no, this isn't.
Well, for example, do you remember seeing any other horror movies around that time, or was that like kind of you stepped away from your normal path?
Oh, no. I mean, I'd seen The Exorcist. I'd seen Rosemary's Baby.
Okay,
that's seen all of those. I certainly agree. It does have a lot going for it. Yeah. One of the things I didn't really realize the first time, 2 times I saw it, but that I saw now, is how well directed it is and how good the cinematography is. Especially the opening.
This guy, Richard Donner,
who went on to do Superman, of course. But it was his first feature, and because it was so successful, then he was able to do Superman. And I think it's extremely well directed, and the cinematography is very good too. And the opening scenes in the Italian hospital are very well photographed and very well directed.
He had a bunch of TV work.
And then he jumped at the chance because this was a feature, and he wanted to get into movies. I don't think anybody had any real idea that it was going to be
such a classic,
this big a film. And
you say it did well. It didn't do well back then.
No, critic-wise, the critics didn't like it, but it was the 5th grossing movie in the United States of that year. It was a huge success. It's a fun movie. It's a scary movie. I don't really want to detract from the effectiveness of the movie because I really do enjoy it, and I enjoyed it very much this 3rd time. But
we're going to test your brain right now, just in the spirit of Jay Cluett, because he just loves his games, and I always do terrible on him. So I'm going to pressure you. You said Superman. What else has he done?
Oh, he did Lethal. Did he do Lethal Weapon?
He did all the Lethal Weapons, I'm noticing. And he did Scrooged, which I love. I love Scrooged.
I love Scrooged, yes.
Lady Hawk is an amazing movie. He just did a lot of great stuff.
He went on to become a major studio director.
The Goonies. He did the Goonies.
Right. He did some very iconic films that are still very popular, films that people still watch. I think it would be interesting to talk about, in many ways, why it was so popular. Since you're only 6 at the time, you may not have a real idea of exactly the context of this movie.
I don't. Please, fill me in. That'd be neat to hear.
At the time this movie came out, especially even before, the eschatological religious trend had begun, especially in conservative evangelicals, especially Southern Baptist. And eschatological refers to the end of times. It refers to the second coming of Christ. And before Christ can come a second time, the Antichrist has to appear. And one of the things they keep mentioning in the movie that was very big at the time is the Jews had returned to Israel. That's a major event in eschatological theology. That is supposed to be the beginning of the end times. And this was very big at the time. I'd gone to a Southern Baptist church growing up, and we would always have a lot of fun with this. But at this time, before this, I think it was before this movie came out, there was a book that was published, written by Hal Lindsey, called The Late Great Planet Earth.
Oh, yeah, Hal Lindsey, yeah.
Yes, which was an attempt by Hal Lindsey to predict and interpret current events in relationship to the end of the world, to the second coming of Christ, to the arrival of the Antichrist. And this was a huge bestseller. It's made into movies. I read it. A lot of people read it. And we would have fun trying to
figure out the end of the world.
Yeah, trying to figure out the current events. The Antichrist was actually very, very big at the time. And you have it following The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. So you have sort of a perfect storm here of it arriving at just the right time. And the movie does make some errors. And one of the ones that people would always make fun of is this poem that they would recite that starts when the Jews come back to Zion. The implication is that it's from the book of Revelations. And as a few critics pointed out, well, it may be from the book of Revelations, but it's not from the book of Revelation because there is no book of Revelations in the Bible. And there is no such poem in the book of Revelation.
Oh, how funny.
Actually, when I actually saw the movie another time, I'm not sure they ever claimed that it's from a book in the Bible. I think there is an implication that this is just a poem that someone wrote based on eschatological events. But people did make fun of the fact that they said Revelations when there is no such book. But it really fit into the zeitgeist of the time. Now, it's not so big anymore, and I think one of the reasons why eschatology is not as big can be stated sort of as an anecdote I had with someone who owned a Christian bookstore. And I asked him about The Late Great Planet Earth, and he says he has a problem about a book that predicts the end times if it has to be updated every year.
Yeah.
And here we are, 2020, nothing that has really been stated in The Late Great Planet Earth has been in any way shown to come about. And there has been no end of the world, no Antichrist has arrived.
I totally get what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you go to a soothsayer one time, and if they get it wrong, you don't go back.
Right. Its time has come and gone. But the Omen still is very scary.
Yeah, and that poor wife, when she's in the hospital bed, obviously we're on spoiler time here.
All mine are spoiler.
Okay. It's, she's just so beat up from falling and everything. And, in her cast, I think she's in like a neck brace. The only thing she can get out is, don't let him kill me.
Right.
I just thought that was so great. It's like, forget our relationship, forget anything. Just don't let him kill me. I mean, that alone should have made him think, okay, this is not our son. I need to listen to what's going on, around me. I don't think he really does. It
takes him a while for him to finally catch on. This idea of this evil child is a recurring theme in a lot of movies, and especially for horror and science fiction movies. And one of the things I think that it feeds into, and I don't know if you'll be able to speak to this because you have 3 children, is all of these people with evil children. One of the conflicts is, are my children evil? Or is this all in my imagination? Did I do something? Is this all my fault? So what these movies do is take a fear, and most horror movies, I think, work because they're based on some fear of something. So they take this fear of children that you don't understand and you don't know what's going on with them, and they start living their own lives, start becoming their own people, and you start losing control and you don't know what's going on and you don't know whose fault it is. And then they take this fear and they just expand it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, lots of horror is like that. I don't know if you've seen Martyrs. I don't recommend it if you're not a horror fan. But like in Martyrs, it's kind of like the fear of what would happen if they removed your skin. I mean, people have these fears and movies focus on them. And so, yeah, for that one is definitely, is my kid evil or did I do something wrong? It was very well said how you said that. And I think he falls into that more than the mother. I think the mother just clings to him as her baby and really loves him. But then as these things start to happen, she gets the memo. He doesn't get the memo and keeps protecting his child, assuming his wife has gone insane. We just hate to see that. If it's just the idea of one of my children hurt my wife, I hate to say it, but I probably would defend my wife. We do wonder, did we do okay with our kids? Did we say the right thing? I mean, just one example, I let my kids watch R-rated movies pretty early in life. They're pretty much older now, but my son is 22 and my daughters are 13 and 15. They're kind of older now and they know rated R movies, but when they were younger, as long as I felt like it had a good message, or I could just say hide your eyes at certain parts. But I remember thinking sometimes, should I have done that? Maybe I shouldn't have shown them certain things. But
Right.
So yeah, you have that lingering in your head as a parent. And then to see that, you go, uh-oh, is this me or is this the devil?
You make a good point also about the mother, because in these movies often the mother is the first to get shot. And one of the reasons is, one is that she spends more time with the child. So while the father is off doing whatever he does, and he comes home and the mother is complaining about these things, he thinks it's all in their imagination, but he's not there. He doesn't see it. Secondly, the mothers quickly come to realize there's some missing connection that should be there between a mother and a child. I gave birth to you, yet there's something missing here. And why it's missing, of course, is one of the things that she can't answer. Is it something I did? Is it something innate? What is going on here? And this is often a recurring theme in evil children movies, especially the supernatural. I will add now some interesting facts, perhaps, about the Omen. Gregory Peck was the third choice, or at least the third choice. There seemed to be some other people that offered it. William Holden, who turned it down, did appear in the sequel. Charlton Heston then turned it down after William Holden did, thought it might be too exploitive. And then Gregory Peck took it. But he took a reduction on his salary so that he could get a cut of the profits. And because of that, he made a fortune. He made more money on this film than any other film he made.
Well deserved, I say. Yeah. He perfectly fits the role.
Patrick Troughton, who played Father Brennan, who is the drug-addicted father who first warns Robert Thorne about his son, was the second Doctor Who. He played him from 1966 to 1969. Martin Benson, who is Father Spoleto, the priest at the beginning. If you remember Goldfinger, the one organized crime figure who did not want to go along with Goldfinger's plan and then was taken out and later killed. That was Martin Benson. Sheila Rayner, who played the housekeeper, was Alex's mother in Clockwork Orange. And David Warner, who plays the photographer, actually played the devil in Time Bandits.
And he was also in, I think, something called Time After Time.
Right. He played
Jack the Ripper. Right?
Played Jack the Ripper. Billy Whitelaw was in Frenzy, and Leo McCurran, of course, was Rumpel of the Bailey.
Yeah, David Warner, he really makes that film. I think he is the secret sauce that makes that film work, because he's going throughout with his camera. He's seeing the impaled spear going in his dark room, and he's like, hey, I got these facts. Let's look at them. So I think he kind of holds it together.
And then he foresees his own death, and it becomes very important to him. And he does have the most spectacular death. The deaths build up in how violent they are and how tricky they are. And his is really the tricky. It takes a lot on the part of the devil to arrange things to get rid of David Warner. Is there any other thing you might want to add about The Omen?
Just that it's a solid horror movie. It's weird, as we get older, we start to realize, especially when doing podcasts, there's a lot of really young people getting into films. I was talking with somebody like this on Skype, and they had never seen Alien.
Oh, the first one?
I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't even want to go on with this show. Go watch it. If anybody has not seen The Omen, especially horror fans, I'd recommend getting in there and seeing it. So I don't want to overhype it, but I would say it's a staple that you should probably see.
I do agree that if you are really interested in horror films, you really have to watch The Omen. So with that, let's now go to my choice, which was Village of the Damned from 1960. First, I will give some information on the film. It was directed by Wolf Rila. The screenplay is by Sterling Siliphant, Wolf Rila, and Ronald Kinnock. It's based on the book The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham, who also wrote Day of the Triffids. It stars George Sanders, Barbara Shelley, Martin Stevens, this time is the evil little child, Michael Gwynn, and Lawrence Naismith. And the basic premise of the movie is that in the small town of Midwich in England, suddenly everybody loses consciousness for a few hours.
Yes.
Not long after they awake, every woman of childbearing age is pregnant. The children born are all highly intelligent with gold hair and odd eyes. Who are they and what do they want? So let's start again with, when did you first see Village of the Damned?
I have had a hard time getting this movie because it's not really on too many services, but I rented it. Yeah, I saw it last week after I saw The Omen, and I gotta tell you, it's very well made. I love Twilight Zone, so because it's black and white, I make a connection to Twilight Zone. But yeah, it sort of looked like a Twilight Zone, and I thought the kids were scary. They definitely were not the children of the adults. They figured that out pretty quick. I mean, go with it. Just tell me more about it. I want to know more about it. I loved it.
Well, I first saw it probably on TV when I was probably in high school. And what struck me about it is that it's one of these low-key horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real CGI or special effects, except for like the eyes. It depends more on character and dialogue and mood and a low-key story. And I found it quite fascinating because it was, I guess you would call it, unpretentious. That does a lot with, in many ways, very little. And
Okay.
I was very surprised at that. And I've seen it a few times since. It's very clever how the plot works out. It's very well acted. One of the things I think that perhaps makes it work is that it's very realistic, at times almost documentary, in how it's filmed and in how it's written and how it's approached. So it feels very real at times, which makes the whole thing even eerier.
Now, if I may, you're just a couple years older than me, so when this was coming out, did you remember seeing the posters and things for the movie, or were you old enough?
No, I wasn't old enough. It came out in '60. I would have been 6 years old. And I
Yeah,
was
it was almost the same age I was when The Omen came out. That's weird.
And I grew up in Corpus Christi, Texas. I can't say for a fact that it didn't show there, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. It's a small town. And also,
Right.
when the movie opened, nobody expected it to be so successful. In England, I think they had a rather regular opening, but they didn't do a lot of advertising, didn't get a lot of reviews, but suddenly lines were around the block. In the US, they did even less advertising. They just dumped it and were really, really shocked to find out that there were people lining up around the blocks to see it because word of mouth was so...
It's a thrill. I mean, horror is a thrill. If it doesn't have that thrill, or like I said earlier, that creepiness factor, then I'm not interested in it, and this one is really creepy.
It's very creepy.
You have to open your mind to it, though. I will say that, because if you're, say, somebody in their 20s, you're just getting into movies, and I don't want you to think you're going to sit down and be completely blown away by modern standards. But at the same time, like, the eye thing is so. I found that hokey. Like you found the other movie hokey. I found the eye thing very hokey.
The special effects are dated, and in its defense, there aren't many special effects. That helps in the movie. If there had been a lot of special effects, then it might have appeared even more hokey than just the eyes. But I think
funny. I'm looking at IMDb right now for it.
Right.
It got the exact same score that The Omen got, 7.3.
It's not a movie that I think a lot of young people are that aware of or know of.
It's hard to get, like I said.
And it doesn't have the same scares or chills that you get out of modern horror films.
Maybe not.
It's not torture porn. It's not a jump and go boo movie like some films are, like It. And there were a lot of movies at that time, both sci-fi and horror, that were actually very modest, that were very effective. You have things like Night of the Demon with Dana Andrews, which is, I think, a very, very scary movie. You have things like Colossus, the Forbin Project, which is one of the very first movies about a computer that becomes sentient and starts taking over. You have things like The Day the Earth Got Fire, which is about what happens when too many nuclear explosions and testing throws the Earth off its axis and puts it a little closer to the sun, and things start going very bad for the Earth. And you had these series of very intelligent, very smart films before we were able to have the new special effects films.
Well, I'm looking forward to at some point having you on my show, and I would love for you to talk about script writing a little bit, because you usually mention it on The Lamb in some capacity, and I'm just fascinated by that. When you write a script, do you think about the pop culture, since this show is called Pop Art, do you think about, obviously people are not into eschatology right now, so you're probably not going to bring that into it. Do you actually think about pop culture and put it in the nuances of your scripts?
No, when I was writing plays, I would. My plays would be filled with pop culture references left and right, and non-pop culture references as well. I would have everything. I don't do that very much anymore because you realize that gets dated really.
It's hard to get a handle on it, yeah. Even for the timeless things.
Yes, people don't always understand the jokes anymore, or they're too obscure. I never think about things when I write a screenplay. I just write something that I'm interested in. I have written not an eschatological screenplay, but I have written an apocalyptic screenplay about the end of the world, though it does make some reference to eschatology, but mainly to say that, no, this end of the world has nothing to do with eschatology at all.
Yeah, because I know that there's a lot of stuff in this that you were able to fill in some of the blanks by saying my small town probably didn't play it. You know, I would never know that. I would never know that there'd be an option for a town to not play it.
I mean, it was Corpus Christi, Texas, 200,000 people. They tended to play the bigger movies, more major ones. When I got into high school, they actually did start branching out, and they actually had Costa Gravis. They had Ingmar Bergman's Cries and Whispers. This might have shown at like a drive-in. I started going to drive-ins. They wouldn't check your IDs, so
that's great.
To see movies that you would never be allowed to see.
Yeah, that would hold up the line of cars, wouldn't it? If they had to check everybody in the car's ID.
What are some of your favorite parts of Village of the Damned?
Gosh. Well, the eye thing was, I mean, that's just unmistakably. It's so bad, it's funny. But you can actually get into that place where you sort of like call that suspense of disbelief.
Yes.
Like, you can actually put that aside and really get into this movie. When I was growing up, you know, when you'd be homesick or something, you know, Mom would put on Bonanza or Little House on the Prairie, or occasionally there'd be a Twilight Zone. So it kind of brought me back to my childhood when, you know, watching black and white movies, and that was neat. It's really well made. As far as a scene, nothing really sticks out as my favorite scene, but I did like the scenes when the kid, who's like the main kid, the boy, when he would like talk to the parents and just say, you know, thank you for what you've done. Now you need to find places for us to live. And whoa. That was like a big change. For a while there, you think, okay, well, maybe they're just enhanced. Maybe they have some, you know, extra abilities or something, but they're still their children. That's when you go, no, this is from another planet. They're taking over. They're going to colonize. And so that's probably my favorite, like, switch in the plot.
And related to that, one of my favorite scenes is at the very end when they announced what happened in Russia. When the Russians realized there was nothing they could do to stop these children.
Right.
They bombed the town, and they killed everybody in the town.
And that's the George Bush option.
It is very horrifying to think that they did this. And at first I'm horrified. But then the longer you think about it, I'm going, well, what choice did the Russians have?
And I love the bomb. Did you love the bomb? It was like 3 sticks of dynamite and a clock and some wires.
Yes. That is one of the most famous scenes. And the most famous line is, he's thinking of a brick wall. That's a line that's often used. I think The Simpsons has done something on the Village of the Damned. My favorite scenes are whenever the children turn on people and they make them kill themselves or do something to themselves.
Yeah.
And just to look at the kids. They're born like perfect Aryans. Adolf Hitler would just absolutely love. And then they turn into upper-class twits. Like they're perfect for the House of Lords. Some interesting facts about the movie. Barbara Shelley, who played the wife, was the scream queen of Hammer horror films. Martin Stevens, who played the son of the central character of George Sanders, also was in The Innocents, where he also plays a very non-innocent little boy.
Yeah.
Lawrence Naismith, who plays the Doctor, was the captain of the Titanic in A Night to Remember, who's also in Jason and the Argonauts. Clive Powell, who played Martin Stevens as a much younger child, as a baby. He was in the sequel. He was one of the children in the sequel, Children of the Damned. And I also highly recommend Children of the Damned. I think that's also a very nice, low-key film that has a very different feeling from this, but still has some of the same concept. Ron Goldwyn, who did the music, also did the music for the Miss Marple movies with Margaret Rutherford. What might be interesting is the original name of the movie is The Midwich Cuckoos. And cuckoos are birds that deposit their eggs in other unsuspecting birds' nest. So the other bird will raise them. In addition, the cuckoo chicks will often kill the other baby chicks in a fight for food and shelter.
Yeah.
The original had a very interesting name.
Yes, it did.
Is there anything else you might want to add?
Just that it's a really solid old black and white movie from 1960. You know, they put it in horror, right? There's really not much horror, but I think back then, seeing the fire and the music at the end, you know, when they blow up I guess it's like a farmhouse that they're in, I think.
Or an old abandoned building of some sort. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's really fake looking, all of it, but it's almost cool to me because I mean I've studied film for so many years just for my own enjoyment. I tell you, it looks really fake. The fire, I don't even know if the fire's, I think it might be superimposed.
I think so. It's not really consuming the house
Yeah.
like a fire would. That's very common.
Yeah, but they play the music and it's all epic, and they show the words at the end and the credits. I don't know, I walked away from it really satisfied.
Moving on, I did ask you if there were movies you might want to recommend that were in the same vein as your choice of The Omen.
Oh my gosh. Could I get you to go first? I remember you told me that. You asked me to do that. But I do have some in mind, but if you could go first, that'd be awesome.
I will go with the idea of evil children. So I will choose two. The first one, which is a non-horror film, is called These Three. It's from 1936. It's based on Lillian Hellman's play The Children's Hour, though they removed the lesbianism of the play and replaced it with a heterosexual love affair. Benita Granville is the evil little child who starts telling a lie about her teachers because she wants to leave the school, and it leads to a great deal of tragedy. Though not as much as it does in The Children's Hour. It does have a happy ending. The next one is a movie called Good Night, Mommy. It's an Austrian movie from 2014. It is about a young boy who is having an odd relationship between his twin and his actress mother, who is never really seen except in bandages because she's undergoing cosmetic surgery. It is also very eerie and very strange, and it is a very effective little horror film.
Yes, yes. I wanted to just bring up one that I talked about, creepiness. There's a movie, I don't know how many people know about it, but it's produced by Eli Roth, and that's how I came to find it. And it's called Clown, 2014. It's a loving father that finds a clown suit for his son's birthday party, only to realize that it's cursed. And so when he puts on this suit, he can't get it off. He even tries a chainsaw to get it off. It sort of has the dynamic switched, where the dad is actually kind of the evil one, but very creepy throughout, from the beginning to the end. Another one, Insidious. I think Insidious would fall into a similar category because the son becomes possessed. He's a very young guy. That's by James Wan.
Sounds great. Closing out, why don't you let us know what's coming up?
Well, with the quarantine, I haven't had as much time to come in here and record my horror movies, but I have about 5. So let me tell you what's coming up. I use this site called Letterboxd, and it's really to my liking. It's just figuring out what your follower, like people that follow you, what they like. Let me see here what's ready to go that I've seen that I have to record. There's a movie called Pigster that is so bad, but I loved it. It's about a guy who's like demonic pig. He becomes a demonic pig, and he just basically goes on a killing spree. So I'll talk about Pigster at some point on RileyOnFilm.com. Blackwater was another amazing one that I'm going to be talking about probably the week after.
Which one is that?
It's an Australian film. It looks a little low budget, but it's really well done. It's an alligator film, and everybody's on a boat, and there's this really hungry alligator that's like taking control of the boat. So I'd recommend that. So those two I'll probably be doing in the next couple weeks.
Great. As for me, I will go over my usual litany. I'm a script consultant, and I do have a Facebook page called Howard Casner Script Consultation. I have a blog called Rantings and Ravings, which covers topics about movies and screenwriting. I've published 2 books of short stories on Amazon, The Starving Artist and Other Stories, and The 5 Corporations and One True Religion, and these are sci-fi, horror, fantasy short stories.
You have them on the ebook format?
Yes.
Oh, great.
In fact, that's all they are, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ebook, but yeah, they're not in hard copy. I also published the second edition of my screenwriting book called More Rantings and Ravings of Screenplay Reader. I'm an amateur photographer. You can find those on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. You can find those under my name. The previous episode of Pop Art was...
Love that title.
Yeah, was Star Wars and the Hidden Fortress. The next one right now, though I'm not sure if it will happen or will be postponed, but the plan is for it to be about Back to the Future and La Jetée. Both are time travel movies. So with that, I would like to thank you once again for being on my show.
Thank you, Howard.